All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful services in the AWS world, EKS, the Elastic Kubernetes Service. In the next few minutes, you're going to get a crystal clear picture of what it is, how it works, and maybe most importantly, whether it's the right move for your projects. Let's do this.
So this is the big question, right? Kubernetes is without a doubt the king of container orchestration. It's incredibly powerful, but let's be real, managing the control plane, the brains of the whole operation, can be a total nightmare. So what if you could have all that power, but ditch all the pain?
Here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the problem itself, that management headache. Then we'll introduce EKS as the solution, take a peek under the hood to see how it works, check out its awesome AWS superpowers, and then wrap up by helping you figure out if it's the right fit for you.
Okay, so what exactly is this management headache? Well, when you run Kubernetes yourself, you're on the hook for, well, everything. That failed upgrade at 3 a.m. on a Saturday? Yep, that's your problem. A critical security patch that has to roll out across the entire control plane without any downtime? You guessed it, that's on you too. It's a massive, full-time job that pulls your team away from what they should be doing, building great software. And that's exactly where EKS comes into the picture. Amazon saw this huge operational burden and basically said, hey, let us handle that for you. They created a service that takes the controls so you can get back to focusing on your actual applications.
So here's the official definition. EKS is a managed service that makes running Kubernetes on AWS way easier by taking the whole control plane management off your plate. And the key thing to remember is this is still 100% standard open source Kubernetes. It's not some weird AWS version. It's the real deal, just without all the operational overhead.
Now this slide, this is absolutely crucial. It shows you the clear line in the sand. AWS handles all the hard stuff, making sure the control plane is always on, spread across multiple availability zones, applying patches, doing the upgrades, all of it. And what do you manage? The fun stuff, your applications and the worker nodes they run on. This division of labor is a game changer because it frees up so much of your team's time.
So how does AWS actually pull this off? Let's take a look at the architecture. And really, the best way to think about it is to split it into two main parts. You've got the brain and you've got the muscle.
Every single EKS cluster is built on these two fundamental pieces. You have the control plane, which is the brain, making all the decisions, and then you have the worker nodes, which are the muscle, providing all the compute power to actually run your stuff. Let's start with the brain.
First up, the brain. This is the part that AWS completely 100% manages for you. It runs in its own secure network, and here's the kicker. It's automatically replicated across multiple availability zones. That means you get high availability right out of the box without lifting a finger. You don't manage any service for this, you just pay a simple, flat hourly rate for each cluster.
And next, we have the muscle, the worker nodes. This is where your application containers, your pods, actually live and breathe. And here, AWS gives you choices. You can go the old school route with EC2 instances, which gives you total control, or you can go serverless with AWS Fargate and forget about servers altogether.
Okay, so how do you choose? It's actually pretty simple. You go with EC2 when you need maximum control, like you need a specific type of GPU or you need to customize the operating system. It's also great for stateful apps. On the other hand, you choose Fargate when you just want to run your container and not think about servers at all. You just pay for the CPU and memory your pod uses. It's absolutely perfect for microservices. Now you might be thinking this all sounds really complicated, but look at this. The day-to-day workflow can be this simple. First, use a command line tool like EKSCTL to spin up your cluster. Then, and this is a huge point, you use the exact same standard Kubernetes deployment files you would use anywhere else. No changes needed. And finally, you create a service, tell it you want a load balancer, and boom, EKS automatically sets up an AWS load balancer for you. It's incredibly seamless.
Now here's where things get really cool. Using EKS isn't just about handing off the boring management work. It's about unlocking a whole set of superpowers that you only get because it's so deeply integrated with the rest of AWS. Superpower number one, scaling. EKS gives you a killer 1-2 punch for autoscaling. First, you've got the standard horizontal pod autoscaler. This scales your apps by adding or removing pods based on traffic. But then you get the cluster autoscaler, which is pure AWS magic. This scales your infrastructure by automatically adding or removing entire EC2 worker nodes from your cluster, so you always have exactly the capacity you need without overpaying for servers you're not using.
The security integration is another massive win. You can use the AWS IAM users and roles you already have to control who can access the cluster. Then, once they're inside, you use standard Kubernetes RBAC for fine-grained permissions. You can even attach the AWS security groups you know and love directly to individual pods. It's the best of both worlds.
And honestly, that's just scratching the surface. EKS is deeply woven into the fabric of AWS. It uses the VPC for networking, it integrates with application load balancers for traffic, it sends logs and metrics to CloudWatch, the list goes on. This isn't just Kubernetes on AWS, it's Kubernetes that speaks AWS fluently. Okay, so we've seen how powerful EKS is, but does that mean you should use it for everything? Probably not. Let's get practical and figure out when it's the right tool for the job and when it's not.
This is probably the most common question out there, EKS or ECS. And this table breaks it down perfectly. The main thing is, EKS is Kubernetes. That means it has a steeper learning curve, but what you get in return is incredible control and portability. Your skills, your YAML files, they work anywhere. ECS, on the other hand, is Amazon's own thing. It's simpler, it's easier to learn, and it's a fantastic choice if you're all in on the AWS ecosystem and don't need to run your stuff elsewhere.
And let's be real for a second. Sometimes EKS is just overkill. If you have a simple web app that doesn't need complex orchestration, or if your team has zero Kubernetes experience and no time to learn, you should look at simpler services like AWS App Runner or ECS. Don't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
And finally, let's talk money. The cost for AWS to manage that entire control plane for you is just 10 cents per hour, per cluster. That's it. Now, of course, you still have to pay for the EC2 instances or Fargate resources your worker nodes are using, but the management fee itself is super predictable and affordable.
So if you're going to remember one thing from all of this, let it be this right here. EKS isn't some weird watered-down version of Kubernetes. It's the real deal, just supercharged with all the power, security, and flexibility of the AWS cloud. And that really brings us to the final question, a question for you and your team. As your application grows and scales, the work required to manage the platform underneath it grows too. So you have to ask yourself, at what point does it make sense to hand the keys to the control plane over to AWS and free up your team to focus on building